Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Everything Phil Collins. I'm Scott, and today we're going to be talking about this new-ish Genesis Live recording vinyl. It's called Live at Nassau Coliseum, 1981. I believe, do we know when it was recorded? I think it was November 29th, 1981. And this is in the Abacab era, so kind of heavy on the Duke and Abacab tunes. But before we talk about this and some of the information surrounding this record, I want to tell you about a giveaway. I actually was given this copy by my friend Darren, who's local here. He bought me this, which is so generous. We talked about it recently. And then I was just given another copy by my friend George from Australia, and this one is still sealed, and it comes with a little note that says, donation for Patreon giveaway only. So if you're on one of our patrons, if you are, then you know we like to have a lot of fun over there and do some bonus videos, some extended interviews, some behind the scenes stuff. You get a chance to speak into new videos that are coming and do some polls and stuff. So we only have about 12 or 13 patrons. So I'm going to give you a chance to join, because then you have like a 1 in 12, 1 in 13 chance of winning this. We're also doing another giveaway in a couple of weeks that's massive, that features a test pressing. I don't want to give any more information away right now. But that's also just for our patrons. So come on over, go to patreon.com/everythingphilcollins. The link is in the description below, and you'll be entered to win this. We'll be doing this draw just a couple days after Christmas. So hopefully you don't miss the chance to get entered to win this. And come join our Patreon. It's a lot of fun if you're a big Phil and Genesis fan. So this record, we're going to listen to it today, and we're going to compare it to some other records and other bootlegs that came out around this time. Now, is this a bootleg, quote unquote? You may have noticed, and with the excitement around vinyl these days, there's a lot more vinyl releases that are coming out that don't appear to be official. I mean, they're obviously not promoted by the band. One of the suspicious things, and we did this in a review with Phil Collins at the Tower, was there's no publishing information. There's no information about who recorded this or the master owner, who owns the masters. A lot of that is a little suspicious. You'd think that the band or Concord would be behind these releases. Live at the Tower, there's also I was recently gifted the rehearsal recording of the Six of the Best with Peter Gabriel. That's a reissue that's happened recently. There's some new ones coming out. There's a double, 2 records, but actually each one is a double vinyl. So 4 records coming out for the LA Forum in 1986, the Invisible Touch Tour, as well as some selling by the pound stuff. I think there's the Windy City records. Live at the Tower, Phil Collins' release was done by Gimme Recordings. This is done by Parachute Recordings. I'm not too familiar with them. I spoke to the guy who owns the record store locally, and I asked him about these, and he said that there was a law passed relatively recently that allowed for the resale of broadcast recordings. And if you notice on all of these records that I've just mentioned, it's keen to mention that it's a broadcast. The LA Forum one is also a broadcast. There's the strong likelihood that this has come from Wolfgang's as well. If you look at Wolfgang's website and the Bill Graham recordings, that it's very similar to those recordings. So that's probably where they're sourcing the audio from. I talked about this record a little bit. We're going to listen to some samples and compare it to some of the 3 Sides Live. We'll compare it to some other bootlegs as well. The audio recording is really incredible. It's really nice. It's not like, the traditional bootlegs that we're used to. They're not audience recordings, so there's some integrity with these releases compared to some of the bootlegs from the 70s and 80s where there was no integrity. Look at this one here. Look at how they refer to me and Sarah Jane. It's me and Sir Yak. We'll talk about that in 1 second. Unlike official Genesis releases, this is closer to the actual set list, although it's missing songs like The Lamb Lies Down Broadway. It's missing more Abacab stuff like It or Not or Another Record. You can take a look at the track listing there, and this is what makes us think it comes from Wolfgang's, because it is the exact same track listing that they have there. It's probably a soundboard. Well, I guess it would be a broadcast, so I'm not really sure how it was recorded. Again, it doesn't come with any information, which is unhelpful and somewhat suspect, but I have an obsession with bootlegs. I really do. I mean, not only do they give us access to more and more material, I'm also a huge fan of physical. And so a lot of people say, why do you buy these? Well, these were gifted to me, but why do you care about these? Because they're all available digitally online. That's ridiculous. I mean, I have an obsession with vinyl. I have an obsession with artifacts. Let me show you some of the other bootlegs we're going to compare it to today. This is kind of a box. It's called Picture About. You may have seen this. This is from France, 1981. This is a recording in February of 1981 from the Abacab tour. This is pretty rough. It's a very rough in the sense that It was rushed, and it's a bootleg in the sense that like nobody cares about the band or about the music fans. They care about making money. And so, like I mentioned, you have a lot of typos on the back, but even worse than that, that I could live with, but there's actually total mispressings where one side of the record, and I think I've talked about this before, one side of the record has the exact same thing on side B. And so they just I don't even know how you do that. Anyway, another bootleg we're going to listen to today is this new one that you're going to see this in another video, but this is from my friend George in Australia. And this is Perilous Schizophrenia. And this is a bootleg as well. So we're going to take a peek at that. This is number 392 of 500, which you can't put much weight into, right? Because they could be lying about that as well. We're also going to compare the sound to this, which is not a bootleg. This is Three Sides Live, and this comes from the same era. One of the things I like about some of these things in the LA Forum one that's coming out is they're far more complete than the official releases. Genesis Three Sides Live is not the set list in any way. It's a little bit more of greatest hits from that tour and from that era. It includes Follow You, Follow Me, which I don't believe was on the set list on these 1981 dates. It's a little bit, the arrangements moved around a little bit just to fit better on the discs. Of course, this record has the B-sides, although this is technically the UK version, which includes One for the Vine and It. I've been looking for this for a long time here in North America and finally just found it. Very happy about that. It actually feels better. It's printed on nicer paper too. So now you're curious, what does it sound like? First of all, this is a great record. One of the things I really love about these records is that they are put together really well. There's integrity in the spelling, maybe not in the publishing information or in the rights information, which kind of sucks. There's always a nice big fold out. This is very similar to what we saw with The Tower that I did a whole video on with Phil Collins. And the recording quality is really good. The song selection is really good. The exception between this and some of the bootlegs I have, as well as the exception with Three Sides Live, is Firth of Fifth, which we don't get to hear very often in the early 80s. I do have, it is a B-side on the 12-inch version of That's All. But that sounds really, really great. It's nice to have that on this disc. Same thing with Man on the Corner, Drum Duel, and Dance on a Volcano. We don't always get those on some of the other bootlegs from that era. It's so fascinating because, like I said, I love bootlegs so much, and I just love these like kind of rare artifacts, these like super quirky products that were made, especially in the vinyl. I'm looking for some cassette bootlegs one day. CDs, they don't touch me in the same way that vinyl bootlegs do, but I really I love the weird artwork that they have. I mean, I love how handmade they are. Look at this one. This has been glued on. And then it's like blank here, blank everywhere else. In some cases, they completely lie about what's on the disc. There's just a history to them I find really fascinating. And these are they're taking a different direction when it comes to the types of records that are made. Phil at one time said that he wasn't too bothered about bootlegs as long as they weren't taking away from something that a fan could actually buy in the store. So if it's a direct copy of Abacab, that means that fans weren't buying their copy of Abacab. And I understand that. You see that with the DVD and Blu-ray market, that people just copy actual records. And then, of course, in the Napster era, you would take MP3s of CDs that you used to buy, and you'd get those for free. Bootlegs is a different world because in a lot of these cases, the band hasn't released something exactly like this. So this is a broadcast recording that we all could hear, and now it's pressed to vinyl. So it's kind of like an interesting little gray area. I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm really doing some research on this. I'd like to do some research on the history of bootlegs. If you know anything, reach out to me, and we're gonna do a big deep dive on some of the original Genesis bootlegs, because I have maybe 24, whereas like I know a lot of you have, some of you out there, and we read it in the Genesis Museum book, some of you have hundreds upon thousands of bootlegs. So we're gonna hopefully do a little bit of a deep dive and do an episode on that. But hey, enough talking. Let's listen to this record, and then we'll compare it to some of the other records. I will say, like I mentioned, just one more note on bootlegs is that 1981 or 1980, the Abacab era is the era that it's easiest to find bootlegs for. And there's a couple reasons for that. And these are mostly theories, but the reasons are, first of all, is the height of vinyl. It's just before cassettes would start to take over. And you see that too with the ubiquity of Abacab and Hello, I Must Be Going in record stores. So it was the height of vinyl. Second of all, it was the height of, I think it was the height of the band in that kind of like quirky, what would have been indie rock back then, it's not indie rock, but like that quirky college circuit, that theater circuit of really a band who's doing some really crazy and interesting things. They were the hottest ticket, pun intended, for another bootleg from that era, but they were a very, very sought after band. Just before they kind of became mainstream. So this would be like your cool college roommate told you about this band. There would have been really intense excitement to get a bootleg from their show around that time. So I think we have a lot of bootlegs from the Duke and Abacab era. I've interestingly never come across a Genesis bootleg. Yes, a couple digital recordings, but never come across a Shapes era bootleg. Anyway, the other reason too, I think, is perhaps there was so many of them from that time, and maybe people aren't as crazy about that era as they are, let's say, the Selling England era or maybe the later era. And so that's maybe why they come up a little bit more often at record shows. So I want to compare this one here, and I want to compare this one here, which is an audience recording. I want to compare this one here, which is an official recording. And I want to compare this one here, which I believe is a audience as well. Now, we got to be really careful here, because if I play too much of the official band's music, then YouTube will ding me and I'll get in trouble and Tony Smith will come around my house. We're going to use the song Abacab because that's the only song that's shared across all of these records. Then we're going to use Behind the Lines to compare between this record and Three Sides Live, because you're going to hear a drastic difference between this and some of the audience recordings. But the difference between Three Sides Live and this recording is really difficult to hear. The only thing that I notice, and maybe you can listen for this as well, is these new recordings seem to be a little bit more scooped than Three Sides Live. We hear a touch more bass and a lot more high end on this new, I don't know if they worked on it at all. That just could have come straight from Wolfgang's or wherever they got it from. I don't know if they did any. I would imagine the mastering engineer at the pressing plant maybe would have tweaked things just a little bit, but it's slightly more high end, whereas Three Sides Live sounds a little flat. You tell me. Like I said, I can't play too much or I'll get in trouble. Let's hop over to Three Sides Live. That sounds kind of good. Okay, just in editing this right now, Three Sides Live sounds way better. Not way better, it's louder. It's definitely louder. I would need to adjust the volumes to get it, but it doesn't sound as flat as it did when I was listening on headphones. I'm listening on computer monitors now. They both sound great. They actually sound almost identical. Okay, just for fun, let's listen to Perilous Schizophrenia. I believe this is an audience recording. Sorry, if you were here with me right now, I'd play more, but I can't. And last but not least, this is from Picture About. So that's obviously an audience recording as well. Okay, let's do a real test. Let's do Behind the Lines from Three Sides Live and then Behind the Lines from the new Nassau release from Parachute Recordings. Okay, if you can hear between those two, and now I was listening at downstairs earlier yesterday, try to compare Three Sides Live with this new Nassau Coliseum 1981. This release just came out a couple of weeks ago. I'm hearing a far more hyped sound from these headphones on the new release than on Three Sides Live. Three Sides Live sounds a lot flatter in a good way, like just the kind of the way that music sounded back then. This sounds a little bit more boost, like I said, scooped. It's a little bit boosted in the low end, boosted in the high end. I kind of like that. I mean, it's nice. It's oftentimes nice to listen to flat music. I will often go back to the original copy of Face Value just because it sounds a little bit more Motown than some of the new mixes. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, let me know if you've picked up a copy of this or any of those other kind of newish, questionable gray area bootlegs. I'm very interested in the LA Forum stuff because we don't have anything from that era when it comes to bootlegs. And we actually, unlike We Can't Dance, where we have The Way We Walk, and unlike the Duke and Abacab era, where we have Three Sides Live and other stuff, we just don't have anything official from 1986. We got a little bit on the recent BBC stuff, but not very much. Let me know what you think of these. And please, if you want to win a copy of the record we've been talking about today, still sealed in cellophane, as donated by our wonderful supporter, George from Australia, then come and join our Patreon. The link is below, and we're going to be doing that draw in just a couple days from when you watch this. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe. For exclusive videos, behind-the-scenes content, and to have your say on future topics before I film, have a look at our Patreon page. Thanks for watching.